Welcome to Uncommons Weekly. Now, Parliament is set to resume shortly, and Jagmeet Singh made sure to bring some drama to our return. Earlier this week, he announced that he is ripping up the supply and confidence agreement. In his video announcement, he accused Liberals of being weak and selfish, and he bizarrely tried to cast the NDP as a serious electoral alternative to Poilievre's cuts. For all of those silly theatrics, I still think the best approach is to embrace cooperation in our politics, especially if it means getting things done that improve people's lives. Since the supply deal was struck, you should know, we've seen continued progress on climate action and reconciliation, a new disability benefit, a new dental care program, a new and serious federal housing plan, the beginnings of pharmacare, and much more. Yes, that progress has been imperfect at times, no doubt. And yes, there are many reasons to criticize different government decisions. But I didn't see any substantive criticism to warrant ripping up the supply deal. I also didn't see Singh use his announcement to advance anything new. If I'd been in his position, I'd have put a few big ideas on the table this fall. Electoral reform, restoring the per vote subsidy, name your idea, and made a continued deal conditional on seeing them through. It seems like a real missed opportunity. Of course, cooperation can come in many forms. It can mean a formal supply deal or a less stable case-by-case negotiation. And hopefully, we see a continued but different kind of cooperation on shared priorities this fall. Poilievre supporters will, no doubt, keep demanding an election to kill effective carbon pricing, kill the CBC, kill dental care, but most people just want the government to focus on governing, to address the issues that affect them personally, and the challenges that we collectively face as a country, and they get tired pretty quick of the Ottawa bubble posturing. Which brings me to the Liberal government's approach this fall, and everything depends on competence. Put aside the historic announcements, drop the ribbon cuttings, and just focus on the big challenges. We need serious immigration reform as one example. Immigration remains essential to the well-being of our economy and to our humanitarian responsibilities, and it needs to be sustainable. Temporary immigration has grown unsustainably over the last number of years, and especially since the pandemic. International student numbers have exploded, and you'll often hear the blame pinned on private colleges, but that's only a partial telling. It starts with provincial austerity in post-secondary spending, fueled further and significantly by provinces like Ontario actively promoting public college-private partnerships, while the feds welcome the new labor force even if valid education was an afterthought. The provinces bear most of the blame here, especially here in Ontario, but the feds could also have acted more quickly, which we are doing now, with Minister Miller capping student visas, no longer granting post-grad work permits to international students who complete those public college degrees that are outsourced to private colleges, and rolling back the number of hours that international students can work in a given week. Other problems in immigration are actually no one's fault, and we shouldn't pretend that all of these challenges are so easy to solve. Take asylum seeking, for example. Asylum seekers have grown from 10,000 people to almost 150,000 people per year over the last decade. We need action there too, and we should also ensure that people are treated with dignity as we act. Faster claims processing is required across the board, and there's been some funding for that. Faster deportations are necessary in those cases where people have illegitimately claimed asylum. We also need to ensure that people who are here already are adequately housed, and yes, there's been some money on that front too. And where people have been here more than 5 years and they are contributing to their communities in a positive way, we are all better off if they receive permanent status, instead of working under the table and living too often on the margins. Other challenges in immigration are unfortunately entirely the Fed's fault, including the expansion of the temporary foreign worker program, which creates long-standing conditions for exploitation and has served to drive down low-income wages and upend every entry-level jobs for young Canadians. As Professor Scooterud has asked, we expect workers to compete for scarce jobs when labor markets are slack. Why don't we expect businesses to compete for scarce workers when markets are tight? And yes, then Minister Haidu made some useful changes more than 5 years ago to step up monitoring, increase on-site inspection, and penalize abusive employers. But when a UN Special Rapporteur calls the program a breeding ground for modern slavery, and when government officers are told to skip fraud prevention steps when vetting applications, a serious overhaul is long overdue. The government has rightly reversed its 2022 deregulation of the program, now ensuring a firm is capped at using up to 10% of its workforce with TFWs, and that firms in urban areas can't apply if the local unemployment rate is above 6%. those changes, that's not nothing. But in the words of Mike Moffat, these changes are a good first step, but do not go nearly far enough in addressing the harms caused by the program. He joins other advocates in calling for open work permits, greater worker protections, and yes, a real overhaul. Or we could take these comments seriously. The temporary foreign worker program needs to be scaled back dramatically over time and refocused on its original purpose, to fill jobs on a limited basis when no Canadian workers can be found. I believe it is wrong for Canada to follow the path of countries who exploit large numbers of guest workers who have no realistic prospect of citizenship. It is bad for our economy in that it depresses wages for all Canadians, but it's even worse for our country. It puts pressure on our commitment to diversity and creates more opportunities for division. Now that's from an op-ed written by none other than Justin Trudeau back in 2014. All of that is to say we need the government to remain seized with serious reforms to ensure sustainable and fair immigration, and yes, to show a little humility along the way too. Now, some problems aren't the federal government's primary responsibility like immigration is, but the problems have become so acute that we need more serious federal leadership. Too many people don't have access to a family doctor or health team, for example. I heard it all the time last year in my provincial travels. If primary care is the door to our healthcare system, we have closed that door for millions of Canadians. Encampments, homelessness, and related mental health and addictions challenges, those come to mind too. I was at a Queen's Baseball alumni tournament over the Labor Day weekend where I played very badly, and my old coach raised these issues with me in a pretty friendly way, and he raised them because they are visible to everyone. Now, some politicians, they will weaponize that to play on people's fears. They will point to people struggling with homelessness and addictions to make them into some other, to cancel health services that will ultimately cost lives. Other politicians, they will say the right things, but they will fail to appreciate that the scale of our public health efforts is woefully insufficient to meet the scale of the challenge in our communities. We need a more ambitious and comprehensive public health approach that expands treatment and also harm reduction, and also takes the social determinants of health seriously, including, most importantly, income, housing, that sense of opportunity. Or hey, we could just spend hundreds of millions of dollars and expand alcohol access instead. I don't know what I was thinking, actually. That would be way more popular. I was asked by Metro Morning's David Common recently what my message will be for caucus this fall, and I can just tell you what I said in Sudbury at that swanky retreat at the Holiday Inn. First, it's all about competence in governing this fall, as I've ranted at length about already. Second, we need to educate Canadians about who Pierre Poilievre is and what he has stood for over a 20-year career in Parliament. Aaron O'Toole may not have been conservative enough for their base, but Poilievre's Reform Party brand of politics will be a much harder sell for Canadians when they get to know him, as many of us in Parliament have. And with a new Liberal campaign director, I expect that to happen in earnest with real ad spending. Third, and finally, with a more positive message, if Trudeau is going to be our guy in the next race, he needs to tell Canadians why he's in it, what does he want to accomplish, and how does he hope to improve people's lives with another and likely final term. When his dad ran that final time, he identified 5 priorities, including fighting Quebec sovereignty and delivering on the Charter. Well, Justin Trudeau should tell us his. He's a dad and has credibly delivered for kids. The Canada Child Benefit has lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty, and national childcare has put thousands of dollars into the pockets of young families. Next up, a national school healthy food program to help our kids succeed. Trudeau cares. He has credibly expanded healthcare for millions, the dental care program is an early success, and the beginnings of pharmacare will hopefully be in place soon. Next up, a family health team for everyone. Or you could axe serious climate action for our kids and kill the public broadcaster that serves northern and remote communities. The choice is yours.